I think you play it like you do any. There's two aspects of it. One is the personal aspect, and I just think that's seasoning. I have been disappointed before. When we first bought the team, we came roaring out of the gate like at 14-4. Well, I thought I was, Mr. Magic, magic touch, and then lo and behold, we won 7 out of 28 games or something like that. Went into the tank. And
what year was this?
89.
89.
I never recovered. We got a better team now than we did then, and we've had some injuries, and just things didn't go the way we wanted them to go. And it's actually a pretty wonderful life experience to be to pace yourself emotionally, to be patient, something I need to learn, by the way, and not to allow the mood swings to affect your daily life. And unfortunately, my family and the dog cower after a game, because I confess sometimes I get grumpy when we lose games we shouldn't lose. But I'm learning better to pace myself. Now, the other aspect that's important is how do you deal with the public? Because this is, unlike any other business I can think of, this is a privately held partnership, but the public thinks they own it, and do in a small way. I mean, a piece of those Texas Rangers, and that's what we want. We want people, our fans from all over the state, saying, I own a piece of that club. Not only am I going to go see them, but I'm going to root for them and follow them. And so you have to do what I think good politicians do, and this is lessons I learned that I can transfer from the political field to the baseball field. One is talk to your fans. That means you got to have a good relationship with the press. And no matter how ugly the columnists get about us, which they do, that you got to realize that without them we can't talk to the press. I mean, to our fans. We got to have good press relations. And so I work hard to make sure that the people in the press view me as a person that's going to shoot straight with them, but understands that we have a working relationship, that they need me and I need them in order to do what I need to do best, which is to communicate with our fans. And then you lay out the message and the strategy. How does the Texas Rangers intend to compete with a club like the New York Yankees that have got much more money than we do to spend? And that is to build a minor league system, but you put the message out and you say it over and over to Rotary clubs, over and over again to the press people, over and over again to the Lions clubs or the Texas Rangers booster clubs in Tyler, Texas, or wherever it may be. And you got to work hard to get the message out there. And now the feedback is beginning to be, hey, we understand what you're trying to do. We understand budget constraints, and we understand what you're trying to do, and we appreciate your telling us that. Same in a losing streak. You've got to, just for example, last night, I sit with the fans, and I could see, people watching me go down there because is he going to show up during the tough times? He's down there gloating during the good times. Is he going to show up during the tough times? And so, like politics in baseball, there are some symbolic gestures which also make sense. Sometimes in politics they ridicule the gesture as being shallow and symbolic. Well, sometimes symbolism matters, and in this case it was the owner as a fan who has not given up on his club. Also, I was hoping the players would see me there. When they come out of the dugout, since I'm right there, I encourage them and tell them to go get a hit and don't threaten them and cheer them on, and our front office needs the same encouragement. And so that's how you help buoy the spirits of people during a losing streak.
What have you learned about dealing with the press? What techniques do you use?
Well, I try to use humor. I try to take myself lightly, but also particularly the ones who take themselves very seriously, take them lightly as well.
The press taking themselves too seriously?
Yeah, press guys.
Some of them do that?
Oh, no. Well, of course not. No, yeah, they're pretty, there's some fellows out there that are pretty well convinced they understand it all. I would tell you more so in politics and baseball, by the way. I mean, there's some very onerous press people in politics. People are just so heavy and so absolutely convinced they're right, and intense. And baseball, beat writers in baseball, there's two types of writers in baseball. One are the columnists, whose job, got a very tough job, which is to, jump on somebody or praise somebody every day. And the beat writers who have to see 162 games a year. Those fellows get fairly jaded after a period of time, but they're less opinion makers than they are just reporters. And they do a good job, and I deal with them all the time, just little tidbits of information here and there. But it's the columnists and the radio talk show boys that are the ones that can get pretty tough on you, and you just have to be deal with them as humans. I mean,
But what doesn't work? I mean, you must have learned some things that...
well, lying to them doesn't work, or trying to deceive them doesn't work, or not being honest doesn't work, for example.
Do you always talk to them?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't try to freeze them out. In other words, if they say something I don't like, I think the key is, I mean, the biggest fella here in the marketplace, one of them is a fella named Randy Galloway. He's kind of a character, and he does a good job of getting people to pay attention to him. And he said some things I didn't like.
About you personally or
Yeah,
about the team?
that, both. And, you know, I mean, the stupidest decision ever made in the history of baseball, for example, when we, I think, canned our president or whatever it was. And I just said, Randy, look, you can call me anything you want to call me. Just keep calling me, will you? Because I want people to pay attention to the Rangers. And he laughed and I laughed, and I think he understands that I don't take it personally. Now, if he says something, he made a mistake one time, in my opinion, and kind of questioned the integrity of somebody in an organization, and I called him on it. And I think if you can just, if the moment arises where you need to castigate a person, you do it in a way that's not public and that is firm but fair. And I think Randy understood he made a mistake on that issue and has backed off subsequently. But it's not going to prevent him from second-guessing the organization or me. But so far, we've been able to keep it off of a personality plane. And that hasn't happened to my father, by the way. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of these kind of, I would call them minor leaguers who view themselves as major league writers who attack George Bush in a personal way.
You wouldn't be talking about Ĝorџ V, would you?
Yeah, there's one. I sure would. And
those kind of things hurt?
Yeah, not anymore. I don't even read the guy anymore, so I can't tell you if he's been personal or not. But when you read your father being called a lapdog by a person of his stature, I'm not sure I mean large stature or small stature, it bothers you, particularly if you're a feisty Texan, which I am. And yeah, it bothered me. It bothered me for Dad. And but I learned a good lesson from him. And in this case, for example, he just shrugged it off and kind of, you know, attributed it to smallness. And you know, I subsequently found out, and it's probably unfair to say about a fellow like Will, but it's probably for social reasons that he is irked at George Bush. And I don't know. I don't pay attention to it anymore. But my point to you is that if you can keep personality out of this business, you know, and do your job and do it right, and
do you catch people dealing with you because you're the president's son? And when you do, what do you do about it?
Well, I can be pretty abrupt.
Does it happen very often?
Not very much anymore, not really. I think I may have the reputation of being one that can't be fooled easily. I'm pretty accessible, believe it or not, and I don't, you know, I mean, the deal guy that comes and says, you know, people are, I just don't give them a chance. I mean, it's the person that calls them and says, look, I got a deal that we can work in some, you know, overseas country, and all you need to do is this, and I just forget it. You know, I'm not interested. Thank you. End of conversation. Pretty good about ferreting out who wants the special deal or who wants the inside track somewhere.
Where'd you go to school?
Yale.
Before that?
Andover.
What's that like?
Pretty tough existence for a boy from Texas. It was.
Where is Andover?
Andover is a school in Massachusetts. When I went there, it was an all-male boarding school, and
what years?
Very competitive. 1962 to 64. Extremely competitive place to go to school. I learned how to read and write, and although I wasn't very good at it relative to my classmates, I find that it kept me in good stead relative to the rest of the world. And it's a great education, but tough, and kind of cold winters and no girls around, stuff like that. Now it's co-ed now.
Your dad went there?
He went there. One of my brothers went there. Another brother went and exited earlier than expected. And but it's a family deal. I doubt my daughters will go there. I would bet. I'm sure they won't go there.
Why Yale?
I was applied there at University of Texas, and I was all set to go to Texas and got into Yale. There's probably three reasons. One, the family tradition aspect. I can't ignore that. It's been a part of our family, and probably a little bit there. Something like 40 of my classmates went to Yale from Andover, and when I was making my decision one of my great buddies who still lives in Dallas and was my roommate, or lived in Dallas, now lives in Dallas, and was my roommate for 4 years at Yale, was going. And my point is that other people, friends, were making the decision to go there just as I was making my decision. Texas at the time seemed so far away, University of Texas that is, and that I didn't really know a lot of friends that were going there. It turns out I did, but they weren't around to talk me into going or talk to me about it. And the fact I got in, the dean of the school at one time told me there's no way you can get into Yale, you might as well concentrate on places elsewhere. And I said, fine, I'm applying anyway, and got in. And having made this wonderful bravado statement that I'm fine, I'm applying anyway, I thought, well, I might as well fulfill. I have no regrets. A couple of my partners in the baseball team were from Yale. I never would have gotten to know them. A guy named Roland Betts from New York. Never would have known Roland Betts had I not gone to Yale. Hans did a pretty good job of tattooing me with the Yale, Harvard. I went to Harvard Business School as well after the military. Pretty good job of tattooing me with that. He's one of them.